Today's episode of Doc and Jock is brought to you by Score, a new mobile app coming to you this August. Score is an interactive game that lets users win deals at bars and restaurants based on what's going on in live sporting events. Find new places to watch games and save money on your bill at the same time by taking advantage of Score's unique interactive specials that give you additional stakes in the action. A Score special can be anything a location wants it to be, from 10% off an item if a team scores a touchdown, to a free round of drinks if a quarterback throws for 400 yards. Any stat can be turned into a game. Pick the deals you want to win, watch the games you want to watch, and score deals in real time. The app will update when your team or player records a relevant stat. Coupons are sent to your device to show your server or bartender. It's that easy. Score is coming to the App Store and Google Play this August. For more information, check them out on the web at score-app.io and follow them on Twitter and Instagram at ScoreDeals. Score. Watch games. Score deals.
Is there a sports podcast in Detroit that people are talking about?
Hey, everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What up, everybody? Thank you for downloading another episode on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. You're listening to Doc and Jock. What's up, Cousin Adam? What's going down?
Absolutely nothing, man. Just Tigers making moves. Looks like it's going to be a very, very long rest of the season here in Tiger Town. It's not looking good, dude.
When you plan on having a relaxing night like I had, planned for Tuesday, I just kind of wanted to sit back, watch the Tigers. I didn't really think that a move was going to be made one day after everyone kind of had that hubbub, when the perfect timing, the perfect storm was going to happen. Everybody thought that maybe JD on Monday was traded to the Nationals for Victor Robles, and people were excited. They were generally like, yes, good. You pinched a guy that has some talent. And then no less than 24 hours later, Avila pulls the plug and unloads JD Martinez for a haul that at least the fans of the Detroit Sports Podcast hated. Nobody that follows us, at least, liked the move. People were either resigned to the fact that it had to be done, but when they looked at the haul, when the names and the rankings of the guys that we got back came out, people were just like, are you serious? This is what we got for JD Martinez, a homegrown guy that we were able to pick apart from Houston and turn him into a superstar, and that's what you got? And I can't help but feel like Avila got bent over the table and worked because of the fact that we still got to wait a couple years to determine if we won the trade, but at least perception's sake, Avila got screwed here by making this deal.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. Just looking at this, you basically traded for three middle infielders, guys who can sit there and play either second base, shortstop, possibly third base if you need that. All of them are kind of defensive liabilities. Nobody can really hit for any power. Depending on who you go with as far as your projections on prospects, I seen Dawel Lugo rated as high as 2 or 4, as low as 10th. And you got to remember that the Arizona Diamondbacks have a worse farm system than the Detroit Tigers have. So that's saying a bunch. There's a team out there that is in worse shape with their minor league ball clubs than you. And you sit there and you go out there and you basically, like you said, pinch a guy who's going to do what? Nobody even knows. Alcantara, from what I was reading on Fangraphs, he's rated their 26th best prospect. And Jose King, he's playing basically rookie ball. He was signed when he was 16 because he's fast. They took a flyer on him because he was quick. All these other guys, they can sit there and they hit for minimal power. They're okay in the field. It's just, this looks like he just got bent over and drilled extremely hard with no lube, honestly. And JD Martinez was the best outfield bat out there. Look, I know he's a little bit of a liability in the field, but he was the very best bat out there. And if you look at what he's done over the course of the last 3 seasons, he's been an absolute stud. And you trade him away, and I understand that he doesn't have a contract after this year, so it's a rental player essentially. But geez Louise, man. When Dave Dombrowski was here, he traded away an outfielder who was a rental player, and what'd we get? Got a guy like Michael Fulmer. And, it's probably not fair to look at this trade in that way because, look, Dave Dombrowski does things a little bit different than Al Avila, and it was a totally different time, and the marketplace was set a little bit different. But I think if Al Avila would have sat there and maybe sat on this a little bit longer, he possibly could have drove the trade value up for it, because in the end, I don't think he got enough. And I'm sitting there scratching my head at, what are you going to do now with all these infield players? I mean, what does this say for Nick Castellanos? What does it say for Jose Iglesias? Yeah, we're going to need a second baseman eventually if Kinsler's traded or if Kinsler doesn't re-up with the Tigers once his contract's done, or he options out, or the Tigers don't pick up that option. It's just, what are you going to do now with essentially 3 shortstops? I mean, you got Dixon Machado, who at this point probably deserves to play. You should see what you have with Dixon Machado. And he's so far down the depth chart, and now you've got guys basically crowding that depth chart that are behind him. What are you going to do? Unless you take these pieces and you spin these guys into some gold, I just don't see how this works out and how this makes you a better baseball team.
Now, you could say, look, you guys just rouse up the fans, or you guys are just, really angry and trying to portray it this way. Do you respect Tom Gage?
I do.
Okay, right away he comes out and says, put me in the category of underwhelmed. So it's not just fans, it's not just podcasters saying that the Tigers didn't get Hall.
Buster Olney said the same thing, and he's one of the most respected sports writers out there.
People are panning it because of the fact that the rankings of the players that we're getting back aren't that great. And you realize that if you look at it differently, okay, maybe it was a situation where there wasn't much for the market that we all thought for JD Martinez. But at the same time, like you said, if they just waited until July 31st, maybe another team comes in and now you can go back to Arizona or another squad and say, look, up the offer a little bit. You didn't have to do it this day. And I understand potentially that maybe Arizona forced the Tigers' hand. But at the same token, at the very least, it seems like the perception is that if you look at it, the Tigers took the worst option. All we got to hope for is, at the very least, Lugo hits and is an everyday third baseman and is a significant upgrade than Nick Castellanos. That's the really only hope we have in this trade, and Tigers fans have to look at it and say, you got to get more for Wilson, you got to get more for Alex Avila, and you got to make better moves. The first trade that Al Avila made didn't really excite the fans, and I can understand that, but it is underwhelming, but at the very least, he made a move, and it does show you now that the Tigers are in that mode. And hell, I give them credit. They did go out and perform versus Kansas City, still scored 9 runs and played a hell of a ball game. But for Al Avila, it doesn't look like the perception, at least from the fans and from the media, the perception is Al Avila is very underwhelming as a general manager and doesn't seem to have the respect or cachet across Major League Baseball than the likes that we've used to see in Dave Dombrowski. I'm
going to read this straight from MLB.com's scouting report on Lugo. And mind you, Lugo was basically the crown jewel in this trade for the Tigers. He is the most ready player. He is the guy who's projected to actually be able to contribute to a team in the future. Lugo has a quick bat and is very direct to the ball. He doesn't walk much, but he rarely strikes out and has a natural ability to hit the ball through the middle of the field and to right center. Lugo has been a shortstop for the first several years of his career, but made a nice transition to third in 2016. He has a very strong and accurate arm from different angles, showing an ability to make plays on the run. Lugo looks like a future utility man.
Oh,
basically, you got Brandon Inge is what you got.
Nice.
Okay? But the progress he's made points to a potential everyday job in the big leagues. Some of that might depend on if his bat profiles as hot corner, but that seems more and more like a possibility. So it's kind of 50-50 on whether or not he's going to be an everyday player, because he doesn't have the power in his bat and he's not consistent enough with his bat. Basically, you've already got these guys on your roster, and you've got these guys in your minor league system. Utility guys are a dime a dozen. You can go pick them up anywhere. You got Brandon Inge at the end of his career here with this guy. That's what you traded for, and that's what you're going to sit there, and that's how you're going to bolster your minor league system. Mind you, he comes into the Tigers minor league system ranked somewhere between 10 and 12 on their depth chart of what's good. Mind you, he was in Arizona's, and he was, as high as 4, maybe 2, as low as what I've seen with Fangraphs, 10? Get the hell out of here. What are you doing, Al?
Let's play devil's advocate here for just a second, okay? Because as Detroit fans, we can recognize maybe, just maybe, we are overvaluing JD Martinez just a touch. a guy that many across Major League Baseball will look and say has major, not small, major defensive liabilities, and is a guy that's viewed as a rental. So there is an innate market for a guy that potentially is not going to be there. So what that means is Arizona is not going to go out there and say, okay, Detroit, we're going to give you our best prospect in the entire organization, and maybe other clubs as well will not be willing to give you, high draft picks or high prospects, knowing that, a rental player can come in for just 2 months, do the job, and then leave. So that's the tough part about the whole JD situation is there are some red flags regarding his play. There are some facts that, he is a rental, and an organization, when it comes to rentals, might not be willing to, part ways. And so the other aspect that we don't know is what was actually offered. Who are the other teams that have been calling? But at the same token, whether it be 5% more or 10% more, the notion is Al could have got more in this offer. But at the same time, there are people that are saying, look, at least he got something. If he waited, he might not even gotten 2 players. And now you got 3 with maybe the hopes that 2 or 3 of them can at least be productive. So that is the other side of it as well, is that you never know. Maybe Lugo is a guy that can turn it around, because Michael Fulmer was included in a trade where many people thought that Norris and Boyd were going to be the everyday attraction. And it turned out that Michael Fulmer is the Cy Young caliber superstar. So we do have to wait a little bit to fully decipher what we got here. But at the same time, it really isn't like JD Martinez was lighting the world on fire. I don't think 8 ball clubs were really realistically in the market to give you a whole heck of a lot. So I would grade it, for me, as a C, average. It looks like many people are starting to say, okay, we understand we do have to kind of wait and see what's going to happen. But I do think that the love for JD Martinez that's been shown to him, because of the fact he came from a meager upbringing, because of the fact that we really love and respect a guy that turned it around here, that became so, part of the culture of Detroit, knowing that he was kind of let go and shunned in Houston, came over here and became JD Martinez here. So I do think a little bit, not a lot, a little bit fans are holding on tight to a guy that they respected. When you really look at it, the value for JD Martinez, you definitely could have got more. But how much more? I don't think in any realistic sense there was never going to be a trade JD Martinez for Victor Robles. That was never going to happen. But once it happened, that dichotomy, I think, is shaping some of the fans' reaction and some of the vitriol that we got on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast.
See, I think the big issue, not so much that they didn't get Victor Robles, it's more the fact that it's so underwhelming what they brought back. You don't even have a guy of a notable position. I mean, all these guys, like I said, can play essentially 3 different spots, and none of them are highly touted, highly rated. None of them look like they're going to make an immediate impact on this roster at any point in the next year. So going into next season, these guys will probably be floundering around in Toledo, if you're lucky. If you're lucky. And I think that's the biggest issue. And Vito posted something great on his Twitter, and I had to go track it down while you're talking there. And it talks about the highest OPS in the AL this season. And JD Martinez is 3rd on that list. Only behind Mike Trout, who arguably one of the best baseball players in the game right now, and Aaron Judge, who is making a huge name for himself right now. JD Martinez is right there with those guys. He was the very best bat out there. And I know what you're saying about defensive liability, and I get that. But this was a guy who can go to any ball club, and if you need him to sit there and you need him to play outfield, he can play outfield. If you need him to take over and learn first base, I feel confident that he could learn first base and be a power hitter for you, as well as being a DH if you need a DH on your ball club. And now look, he's going to go to Arizona, and he's going to play out there in right field, and I think he's going to be fine, and I think he's going to do a great job for Arizona. I just feel like you should have got a lot more for the very best bat available. And if Al would have just maybe sat there, hung out for another week, maybe sat there, started his own rumors. I mean, he likes to talk a lot. He tells everybody what he's doing all the damn time. Why not sit there and start leaking out your own rumors about, we've got multiple teams interested in JD. The price is going up. We're not really sure what we're looking for, but once we get a great deal offered to us, we know we're going to jump on it. It's just a matter of time in the deal getting sweetened and the pot being right.
Here's another part that made people fascinated. I don't know if you kind of paid attention to it, but some of the media reports that were coming out where other GMs were saying Al has to bring his price down. So I kind of felt like other GMs were working Al through the media, saying that, look, your asking price is way too high. And so I look at it and I go, well, this kind of started back in the offseason when he kind of said, yeah, we're going to unload. We're going to be sellers. And so people were like, oh, okay, so we know that this is kind of what's going on. So I feel like Al Avila is playing poker, playing Hold'em with his cards exposed.
Oh, yeah.
He basically he's like, oh, I got aces. Like, no, you don't have aces. You got like a 2 and a 9, bro. So that's, I think, the best analogy to look at it is that Al Avila is going into the trade market with his cards exposed and everybody's working them. And it just stinks because I don't think Al Avila is playing the game properly. Exactly. And I think to your point, I think that he probably needs to kind of rework how he's perceived in the media and how much information he's revealing and when. I think it's a little bit off. I think he has a strategy and he's trying to put out information. I just don't think it's to the level of other GMs who are trying to, in reverse, lower the cost. So
it's like being in high school, going to try to pick up one of the hottest girls in your class, and you sitting there telling all of your boys about how you're going to sit there and how you're going to do this, and her standing right next to you while you're telling those guys.
You know what it is? Okay, let's look at it.
What are you doing?
Let's look at it in reverse. Let's trade, our bums for Jose Quintana from the White Sox. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what Arizona did. They traded guys that nobody heard of to the Detroit Tigers for J.D. Martinez. Well, why couldn't the Tigers go out there and trade someone, trade a Jimenez or trade someone else, that hasn't been on the roster for a Jose Quintana? Now you got a pitcher. Now if you want to add a piece, you could still technically sell other guys, but add guys for lower end prospects. So it does kind of lead you to believe like, look, other teams like the White Sox are unloading their talent and they're getting a little bit more. So people are thinking that, you know what? And it's to the point that I made a couple of years ago. You sold too late. When you sell too late, then people are looking at you like a garage sale. They're not looking at you like you're going to the prime market. The Tigers are viewed as a garage sale. And so what people are trying to do is get everybody cheap. And Arizona was the first guy at the door when the garage sale opened, and they got J.D. Martinez for like $1. And you're looking at it going, damn, why can't we go out there and sell our guys, sell our garbage prospects for some productive people, even if it's for a rental? So what?
So now here's a question for you. Do you see Al Avila, because I think we're both kind of saying something similar, but we're saying it a little bit different here. All right. Do you think that the Tigers and Al Avila will now hold off a little bit longer to make more trades, or do you think this is now just open the floodgates and he's going to be wheeling and dealing and doling guys out of here? Because my thought process is, I understand what you're saying, and I don't think you necessarily have to wait till the actual trade deadline day of July 31st, but I think if you would have waited a little bit longer and if you would have played this a little bit different, it's almost like bluffing in poker, to use your analogy. You're sitting there and you don't have crap, but if you sit there and you act ballsy enough and you act brazen enough, a lot of times you can scare other guys either out of the pot or to sit there and possibly try to commit a little bit more money and then push them around to get them out. And maybe you sit there and maybe you get your ace on the flop there, or maybe you get your ace on the turn or the river, and maybe you sit there and now you pair something and you have enough to beat them. And that was just because you were just a little bit cockier, a little bit more brazen, and you waited it out just a little bit longer. I'm not telling Al Avila to sit there and now wait until the July 31st deadline, but I would have liked to have seen him wait a little bit longer and maybe use the media to his advantage instead of sticking his foot in his mouth. So do you think he's going to sit there and now start wheeling and dealing guys early, or do you think he's going to sit there and you think he's going to wait a little bit longer? Because look, he hears all this. He hears everything that everybody's saying, and everybody's down on this. Everybody thinks he got rooked.
So the way I look at it is, and the way I'm going to put it is, there's only two other players that are realistically going to get you anything, and that's Justin Wilson and Alex Avila. Now, the way I look at it is, and I think that Al Avila is making calls, he's evaluating it, and he'll make those moves for those two guys, and they'll be sprinkled across Major League Baseball. Everybody else, I don't think that the trade offers are realistic. I don't think you're going to trade Miggy to Boston. There's a lot of salary implications that doesn't make it feasible. I think a lot of other teams would want the Detroit Tigers to pay a bunch of money to take on JV and pay a bunch of money to take on the rest of Miguel Cabrera's contract. So those contracts are prohibitive, and so the Tigers are going to keep those guys. Alex Avila should get you at least a top 100 ranked prospect. Justin Wilson will be the guy that I guess is the next guy we're going to have to focus on in terms of what Al Avila gets, because that's a guy that's a closer, a young prospect that is going to be out there. And now that he's a closer, his first go around with it, many people think, okay, this guy has the goods and he's a left-handed power arm. So across Major League Baseball, that should draw you something where you could get a couple teams ready, willing, and able to make a realistic offer. So if underwhelming is the word that's used for any trade involving Justin Wilson, it's time to let Avila go. It's time to put the heat on him. Alex Avila should get you at least something, at least a top 5 in someone's organization. And you look at it and you say, if you can't make those kind of moves, now we got a problem, because if you can't build a team making trades, we got a big issue.
Here's the thing. Justin Wilson doesn't have to be traded this year. Justin Wilson might not even be traded. The Tigers have him under control for at least another season, so I'm not going to be surprised if he's moved, and I'm not going to be surprised if he's not moved. Alex Avila should be moved, and I believe he will be moved, and he should bring you something back. If it's going to be to this quality that Avila's already bringing you back with the number 1 outfield bat in the entire major leagues, then I'm going to be underwhelmed. I'm going to be upset. All right, Alex Avila should get you something decent, but I just don't trust. I just don't trust Al Avila to make that call. And more to your point, you sat there and you brought up Justin Verlander, you brought up Miguel Cabrera. Now, there's so much back and forth and so much doublespeak coming out of the Tigers front office. It was just reported over the weekend that the Tigers are willing to sit there and pick up some of the salary on Justin Verlander. Whereas when the Cubs were here looking at him, and it was rumored and speculated the Cubs might want him, the Tigers were like, oh no, we're not picking up anything. We're not looking to pick up any type of cash on him. And now you're going to, like a week and a half later, 2 weeks later, you're going to turn around and you're going to say, yeah, we'll pick up some of that salary. We'll pay some of that. Make up your mind. Make up your mind. Everybody who's working in that front office, you have to be a united front. Come on, get it together. Honestly, there are way too many leaks in that Tigers front office, and they say all the wrong things, and then they just sit there and they do double talk. Get your stuff together. Honestly, man, what are you doing? Look, if you can trade Justin Verlander, if the Cubs want him, if somebody else wants him, trade Justin Verlander. Get that money off your books. I don't care if you've got to eat half that contract. You know what you're doing? You're saving half that contract by not having to pay it. Get him out of here, get some prospects in, and then you know what? You opened up your checkbook for next season when free agency rolls around, or you've got money that has been now freed up because you're not sitting there locked into a pitcher who's on the decline, who you got to sit there and you've got to worry about, and now you've got some money that you can sit there and throw around if you really wanted to. And as far as Miguel Cabrera goes, I think Dave Dombrowski has a legit interest in Miguel Cabrera. I thought maybe Miguel Cabrera could head to New York because New York has a large pocketbook and they don't mind to spend. And Miguel Cabrera would look really good in the Yankee pinstripes. Okay, let's just be honest about it. He looked really good in the Yankee pinstripes. On top of it, he's got that really low left field porch out there, or right field porch out there, where he could just sit there and he could just drive the ball all day long, no problem. He'd handle that, and you know how many home runs he'd end up getting? He'd end up tackling Barry Bonds in roughly 3-4 seasons, honestly. Think about it. So Dave Dombrowski or Brian Cashman being on the phone with Al Avila makes me incredibly nervous because both those clubs have prospects. They've got good prospects. Boston just sat there and restocked up, as well as New York last season. They both hit the refuel button, and they just loaded up with their prospects. And they've got guys that they just want to give away for good talent. And Miguel Cabrera is going to be a Hall of Fame talent when it's all said and done. The guy's an outstanding player. I know he's a little bit on the decline this year. He's struggling just a little bit. He's really banged up. Miguel Cabrera should be traded. I'm on your boat now. It took me a whole year, but now I'm on your boat. Cabrera should be traded, and the reason for that is because you can sit there and you can get a nice haul in return. On top of it, you're not beholden to that contract like you wouldn't be beholden to Justin Verlander's contract. And again, if you got to pay half that damn contract, you pay half that damn contract. It was your fault in the first place for signing it. So get it out of here if you can.
Okay, so I want to ask you this before we take our first time out. Now that the Tigers have made some moves, many people are conceptualizing and saying the season's over. Is there a scenario in which you see the Tigers rallying around this and playing a better brand of baseball? I mean, right now, since the team meeting, they're 4-0. They're smacking the hell out of the baseball. They're playing okay. It seems like they're playing together. It seems like they are playing for each other. And so I look at it and I say, you know, you wouldn't naturally think that getting rid of a J.D. Martinez would make the ball club better, and you wouldn't think that, you know, trading Alex Avila or trading Justin Wilson is going to make this season a success. But is there a scenario in which you see this team rallying and actually doing some things going forward?
I think you could make a case. I don't think it's good or the right move for the team, but basically since, like you said, they had that team meeting, you know, they end up going to the All-Star break, but then they come back from the All-Star break and they basically pick up right where they left off. I mean, in the last 4 games, they've hit 36 runs, you know? I mean, that's basically 9 a game. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of offensive production for this team. On top of that, they're only giving up, 11 runs in 4 games? 11 runs in 4 games, and you're sitting there driving 9 across? I mean, geez, this team is playing with a fire right now. I don't know what was said in that meeting. I don't know what's happened. But yeah, I think this could be a rallying cry for this team. And to me, it seems like it's one of those things where it's too little too late, though. You should have had this meeting earlier in the season. You should have had this before you went on that road trip and you lost those games and you lost those series to San Diego and you got kind of pushed around a little bit by San Francisco. And you needed to get this stuff together before you did all of that and really tanked your season. Because after that, Al said, you know what? We're going to sell all these guys. Whatever we got to do. We're going to sell who we got to sell, and that's going to be it. So I think it's a little bit too little too late, and I think it really hurts this team. You know, I mean, losing games to the Mariners and to the Padres really crushed this team's season right before the All-Star break, and I think that's kind of where it is right now.
See, I'm still invested. I think it's curious in that there is a small chance maybe this is used as a rallying cry, and it might not be an exact replacement, but Nick Castellanos' bat has been perking up a little bit as well, and a guy like that, we've called upon him to do a little bit more, and he's smacking the baseball around a little bit. And if this is a guy that can be productive and can maybe take over some of the slack lost by the trade of JD Martinez, heck, maybe there's going to be a trade in the works to let go of Nick Castellanos because of the fact that, you know, maybe he'll be disgruntled or upset at the fact that you basically went out and traded for his replacement. So if Nick Castellanos continues to hit, it can only serve as an advantage for the Tigers because maybe now you add him to the names of people that you could trade for some assets because dude's got a lot of extra base hits. Dude is playing a little bit better this year. Now is he to the level where we all want him to be? No. Defensively, he's got to get a lot better. But at the same time, dude's bat is perking up, and hitting the home run is where this team is built. And hey, as long as he keeps producing, it seems like a team you can continue to watch.
I think it's an interesting question because the American League Central is so bad, and these teams are stacked so close to each other. If one team can get hot and the other 2 or 3 teams that are ahead of them sit there and maybe flounder around just a little bit, you could have a new team leading this division within 2 weeks, maybe 3, you know, depending on how far out everything is. I mean, the Tigers still have a legit chance at competing for a wild card, and we're starting sell mode. Do you know what I'm saying? It's almost counterproductive and counterintuitive, but I just think the Tigers, I think Avila realizes that the jig is up. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've got nothing else to play for here. We've got to start to dismantle this. And so now I got to get what I can get. And it was the smart and it was the right move to trade JD Martinez because it didn't look like you're going to be able to re-sign him in the offseason. And you know what? If he really wants to come back, he can come back next season. You can re-sign him next season. That's no problem. So you can trade him away, get 3 prospects, and then you can still get the player back if they are willing to open up the pocketbooks to him. But it didn't look like they were going to be able to do that. So you trade him away. You avoid getting a 4th round draft pick, and you sit there and you just try to kind of move on with your day. So it was the right move. I'm just not happy with what they got back. I'm nervous with Avila being at the helm. And I think you're right. There is the possibility for this team to sit there and make a run and push for the wild card, possibly push to win the American League Central. I just don't think it's going to happen.
All right, let's take our first time out. Come back. Definitely talk about the Detroit Lions making some news this week. Very excited to see what's been going on at Ford Field. Lots of talk regarding renovations, what's been going on, a change in decor at Ford Field as well. And we'll end this podcast with the DocNJock Pro-Wrestling Report.
Decor or decorum?
Both, potentially.
Both. Okay.
Ooh. Let's see. Stay with us. You're listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. DocNJock here for Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for a place to host our recorded audio. And thank goodness we found Podomatic. It's the host site that's hosted all of our recorded audio, 500 to 600 podcasts that we've recorded since September of 2013. User-friendly, very easy to generate links. All your family, all your friends, everybody that you want to listen to your great podcast can find it if you use a great host site like Podomatic. If you're looking to start a brand new podcast, DocNJock and all the hosts here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network are going to recommend Podomatic.com. Episode 206 rolling right along. Got to talk about the Detroit Lions a little bit. Getting ever so close to preseason football, baby. Can't wait, because I think if you focus too much of your attention on the Detroit Tigers, it might make you a little bit crazy. A lot of news and notes regarding the Detroit Lions. Have you heard about the renovations that have taken place? The Detroit Lions spent $100 million to make the in-game experience a little bit better. The way I look at it, it's going to cost the Ford family $100 million to put a wool over the eyes of all the fans to make it look like, look, eat a whole bunch of food, drink a lot of beer, enjoy the atmosphere, because the shit that we're going to put on the field is going to piss you off. So if we can have at least all the fans be comfortable, we can tolerate whatever we're going to put on this football field, because we don't know yet what's going to happen, especially with some of the injury news that have come out with the Lions.
Did you see what they did? They took down the playoff banners, the playoff appearance banners.
Much better decor, man.
Right.
Oh, my gosh.
They did something that winning organizations actually do. They don't post how many times they make the playoffs or when they make the playoffs. They don't raise banners for those. Your Lions used to, not anymore.
When you look at it, the Lions don't have that much playoff success. I mean, only one playoff victory in the modern era. So I know when, hosts and other media type are looking at it and going, what organization would even put up banners for making the postseason? Well, not to make excuses, but you have to, if you were going to highlight something, maybe highlight the fact that we at least got to the postseason half a dozen times. But no, and all kidding aside, no doubt about it. It's very embarrassing. It's ridiculous to have, because your goal is not to get to the postseason. But it's funny because
should be to win championships.
Hey, you know what? When you look at it, that like drunk uncle that you wish would be like a really close family member, you really look at it and you go, you know what? If that's all we come to expect, maybe making the postseason or making the playoffs is all that we can strive for being Lions fans. I mean, we got to be realistic here. We're all hoping that the organization realizes, look, our goal should be to win the Super Bowl, and Bob Quinn is the newest guy that's going to be trying to take over that endeavor. We have hope because at least he doesn't appear to be an idiot. So that's step one. Now the next step is going to be how he handles the Stafford contract and what's this team going to look like on the field. Because, you can make all the moves off the field. You can, decorate Ford Field however you want. But at the same time, I look at it and I say, please, at this point, none of that really means anything to me. We're so desperate for playoff success. We're desperate for a trajectory of hope and a trajectory of getting to the postseason and victories and success. Because all the things, look what we've talked about in the offseason. Calvin Johnson, a major injury. What's going to happen with Stafford? Is he going to bolt on us? All those kind of things don't lead you to really hope that, we're going to hold the Lombardi Trophy in the next 3 years. Other organizations are talking about, is this key piece that we added going to get us to the postseason? The Atlanta Falcons, can we, recover from losing a coach? And can Matt Ryan take the next step? It doesn't seem like that's the talk with the Detroit Lions. It's kind of like, can they hold on to the whatever success that they had? And when you look at that schedule, it kind of looks like if they perform even mediocre, they should have some success this year. So I'm just hoping that upon the start of the Lions season, we could talk about a little bit more positive things. But it's really hard when you look at the realistic history of the Lions. But at least, start with the on-field presentation. I'm not going to go to any games unless it's free in my books. Are these renovations going to make you want to go to more games?
The renovations won't. Here's the thing. You're a Detroit Lions fan. You sat there and you talked about how you survived the Millen era. And basically, it crushed all of your hopes and dreams and made you get rid of your season tickets.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you've been through the struggle. You understand what it is. So you getting a slightly relevant football product, you're going to attend a game. I'm going to attend a game. I'm not going to go out there and I'm not going to sit there and splurge and get a multi-game package or get a whole season package. I'm just not going to do it. But I'll probably attend like a Thanksgiving Day game, or I'll sit there and I'll attend maybe one of the bigger, more interesting games. Atlanta's going to end up coming to town. Arizona's opening the season here. Pittsburgh's going to be here. That's going to be a big game. Mm-hmm. So I'll probably attend something like that, one of those games. But no, look, you can sit there and you can put as much lipstick as you want on a pig. Doesn't mean I want to go make out with that pig. It's not how it works. You know what I'm saying? But yes, I will go attend a game. I know you'll go attend a game. I know you talk a big game before the season and how you're not going to go and how you don't want to waste your money. And the only way you're going to go is if it's free. And look, you will go if it's free. I'll go if it's free. All of us will go if it's free. But at some point, you will sit there and you will concede and you will go to a game because you're a Lions fan. And for some reason, they can't take it out of you. My grandparents are in from Arizona. I was sitting there talking to my grandmother, and she's the coolest old lady you ever meet, right? And we're sitting there, we're just kind of rapping back and forth, and we're talking about the Lions. And she's sitting there telling me about how her dad used to sit there and scream at the TV because the Lions were so damn bad. And how her dad would sit there and give my stepdad a whole bunch of crap because he was a Lions fan. And I just looked at him and I was like, this is what it is. This is what this team does to
That's
you.
the legacy.
It just, everybody gets crushed by them. It's just generational. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're talking about somebody who's dead and gone. You know what I'm saying? He's almost like 120 years old, right? That was her dad, right? My grandmother's like 80 something. My stepdad's just turned 50, I think 53 the other day. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm 34. So good God. You know what I'm saying? This is what's going to happen. And look, your daughters are going to be born into this. They're going to be bred into this. They're going to hate the Lions too. It's just the way it works. They're going to hate them and love them all at the same time. When I have a kid, my kid's going to come up to me and kick me square in the nuts, and he's going to say, Dad, why did you do this to me? Because you know what I want to do? I want to go punch my dad in the balls and say, why did you do this to me?
Every year when the season starts, we all have hope. We're like, okay, they've made some moves. They've upgraded the offensive line. Maybe they're going to address the running game finally. Maybe they're going to actually fulfill the promise of having a good defense. Maybe some of the guys that we expect to take a turn for the positive is going to take a positive. And then you scroll on to CBS Sports, and the headline reads, CBS Sports has the Lions as one of 10 possible teams that will finish dead last this season. And I'm like, no, because I'm so mad because I can believe it. I could see it. You know, you have one injury. Golden Tate maybe gets a little nick in preseason, or Stafford has a little ankle injury, or something goes down. And we already heard it. Taylor Decker, key offensive lineman, already out with a shoulder injury, and he's been out now, and the timetable for his return is up in the air. So many people are like, ooh, how do you replace a key member of your team like Taylor Decker? And, you know, because of the fact that the Lions played so many close games that they turned around and were on the positive side of, many people think that there's going to be a correction and maybe they'll finish around 7-9, 8-8. But I don't see them being dead last. But I could also see them underachieving and going 6-10 when I have them going at least 11-5, 10-6.
You have them going that high this year?
Let me check now. Yeah,
like they have a shot to actually win the NFC North. Have you seen the schedule?
I did, and I have it right here. So I actually have them going 10-6. Here's the schedule.
Really?
Here's the schedule. Me and Jason did it win-loss.
All right, let me look at this.
Yep. And so I think it's realistic that they can win 10 games because going into it, the schedule doesn't look that difficult, and I have them performing at a decent clip. Jason has them going 11-5.
Oh my God, you guys are sipping the Kool-Aid. That's for damn sure.
We want to be positive to start the year,
obviously. So, like, here's the thing: they're opening the season against Arizona. I don't necessarily think that's a win. I mean, unless this defense is dramatically improved, I don't think that's a win. Arizona has way too much on the offensive side of the ball, and yes, I know Carson Palmer's another year older, another year slower. But still, you've got arguably one of the best running backs in all of football on that team. On top of that, you've got wide receivers. Larry Fitzgerald, he's still playing, right? I mean, did he find the fountain of youth? Because it sure seems like it. Every year he's super productive. And like, they have a decent enough offensive line. So unless the Lions defense is that much better, I'm going to count that as an L. You got them losing to Atlanta. I think they'll lose to Atlanta as well. You think they're going to go into Minnesota and beat Minnesota?
Quarterback situation is going to be very important. I don't think the replacement that they had for Bridgewater is going to be all that significant.
What about Carolina? You got them winning against Carolina?
I do.
You think so?
I do.
And you got them winning in New Orleans, too? So they're going to win against Carolina. They're going to win at New Orleans. Like, I think both of those are probably L's.
Okay.
Those are probably L's. They get a bye week, then they take on Pittsburgh. That's going to be a coin flip because you get the bye week. You know what I'm saying? After that, I mean, they got to travel to Cincinnati during Week 16, and then Week 17 they bring Green Bay here, and that game's always a tipping point for the season. I don't think they're going to be 10-6. I damn sure don't think they're going to be 11-5. I think if you wanted to sit there and you want to do a real quick rough estimate,
sounds
maybe
like
7-9.
That's where you're looking. Okay. Well,
you know, and that's high end. I think they're going to struggle this season just because they've got a really difficult schedule. And look, I like what they did during the draft, all right? But you can't expect these guys to come in and make that immediate of an impact. I think you got maybe two guys who can come in and make an impact day one, and that's going to be Jared Davis, your linebacker, and then you can maybe tease Tabor, maybe. Okay. And it depends on how they're going to utilize him and what they're going to do with him, because he might just be a nickel back. He might just be a dime back. You're not really sure how they're going to utilize him.
So CBS might be trolling a little bit. Come on. I think with Matthew Stafford, I don't think the days of the Lions finishing in last place are over.
Yeah, I think this is the thing, all right? So the guy who wrote this ended up kind of putting it out there where he doesn't necessarily believe that this team will finish dead last. What he points to, though, is that this team won a lot of very close games last year.
And they don't think they can repeat that again this year.
It was all done by Matt Stafford. And he's like, look, Matt Stafford's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. And I just don't see them being able to duplicate what they did last year. And so he makes some good points. I don't think they're going to sit there, and I don't think they're going to end up dead last in all of the NFL. I think there's going to be teams that are going to be much worse than them. But I don't think that they are going to sit there and they're going to win the NFC North. I also don't believe that. I think what will end up happening is they'll be in playoff contention for most of the year, and then probably the final 2-3 weeks of the season, they'll probably be out of it. It's just they've got a really hard schedule. It's really, honestly, it's uphill. And now you factor in the fact that you lost your starting linebacker or your starting left tackle from last year with Taylor Decker going down. I don't think Decker's going to be back until probably week 10. If he comes back this season, he might not even come back. They might just sit there and leave him on the IR all year long, because what's the point of bringing the guy back if he has the chance to sit there and maybe damage the arm more or to sit there and hurt his shoulder? And so there's no point for it. You know what I'm saying? On top of that, I don't know what you got as far as your running backs go, because you didn't address that during the draft, and that was a big issue for me. Amir Abdullah can't necessarily stay healthy. Who else you got back there running the damn ball? I mean, you got guys back there who I don't believe in them. Like Theo Riddick. I like Theo Riddick, but Theo Riddick can't stay healthy all season long. On top of that, he's not really a between the tackle kind of runner. You know what I'm saying? And Dwayne Washington, what do we have there? We don't really know. You know what I'm saying? And look, I think the one guy that I think everybody really likes is Zach Zenner.
Yeah.
And what is Zach Zenner? He's a guy who this coaching staff obviously doesn't believe in, because they limit all of his touches. He'll sit there, they'll give him 16 for one half, then he'll come out the second half and they'll give him 2. You know what I'm saying? He's not utilized properly. And he looks like he's probably your most complete back, a guy who can sit there, run between the tackles and get the outside edge, as well as catch some balls out of the backfield. And yet, he's third on your depth chart, and you don't utilize him correctly. So what do you got for a running game? You know what I'm saying? So you've got some issues along the left side of the ball. I do think that this offensive line overall is much better, and I think that's gonna spell a lot of relief for this team. It's going to make them a lot better, but not having Decker there is going to be a little bit of an issue, and until we get into the preseason, I'm not really sure what we're going to have there, and I don't want to sit there and make any definitive statements. I think they can replace some of Decker's production. I don't think you're going to get the same type of player, but I think you can run some packages to sit there and protect whoever your left tackle is going to be and help them out. On top of all of that, Marvin Jones was kind of a letdown last season. Marvin Jones came on like gangbusters, and he looked really, really good. And then he disappeared. He basically played, and he should have only collected a paycheck for maybe 4 games. He was gone. I don't know if it was whether the defense just sat there and double covered him and he couldn't get himself open, or what. He needs to figure out a way to sit there and get some separation so he can catch some balls. On top of that, Eric Ebron's in a contract year, so hopefully you see some big production from him. I think overall this team and their hopes on being either 11-5 or 10-6 rests on that defense. You need a healthy Ziggy Ansah. You're going to need some production from both of your ends sitting there putting pressure on the quarterback, and those D tackles are going to have to take a step forward. Look for A'Shawn Robinson to be a lot better and sit there and provide some pressure up the middle and sit there and get to the quarterback. Also, your linebacking core, I've got huge question marks there, because going into last season, you had an idea what you had, not necessarily realizing that DeAndre Levy was going to be hurt all year long. The team cut ties with DeAndre Levy. You're now sitting there slotting in a rookie linebacker to play your middle. You've got Tahir Whitehead, who's going to sit there. He's going to play weak side. Who is it? Antoine Williams is going to play your strong side. I'm not sure what you're going to get there, because you're moving a lot of pieces around and you're bringing new guys in. Bringing Jared Davis in and being like, hey, you're going to be the captain of this defense. You got to make all these calls. And Tahir Whitehead, we're going to bounce you to the outside. So hopefully you can make those plays, because that's going to be a little bit different than what you've been doing for the last year and a half. I don't know there. There's too many revolving pieces. And your secondary is what your secondary is. If Tease Tabor is going to be a starter, that's great. That means you hit on a draft pick. I like what Darius Slay has become, and I need Darius Slay to keep progressing and taking more steps forward. He's becoming one of the best defensive backs in all of the NFL.
So from what I'm hearing, you're a little bit more skeptical and realistic regarding the Lions. You have not gotten on the hype train just yet regarding all the positivity that could take place with this team, and I fully understand where you're coming from. I'm just hoping that
I'm a
this
jaded
season,
Lions fan.
No doubt, we all are. I think that there's an opportunity for progress, not because of what the Lions can actually do, but because of the fact that the NFL is built for parity, and this season, the schedule seems like there's an opportunity there to get some wins, and I'm hoping that it's an opportunity to grow, and that this team made the proper moves and is shifting toward wanting to control the ball and score a lot better. But it'll be very interesting. We're definitely going to get into probably next week more as more information comes, because people are now speculating regarding why is it that Matthew Stafford hasn't signed that contract yet? And people are wondering, like, is he playing a little bit of hardball? Is there a thought in his head to potentially bounce? Is he trying to really take it to the paint really hard and sticking it to the Lions, asking for, $30 million plus per season? So more information's coming out, and I think it'll be worth it next week to really look at where it's at if he has not signed his deal. But the last point I want to talk about is in terms of trying to change their perception and improve their decorum. They did extend an invite and some texts with Calvin Johnson in the hopes that he'll come back and forgive them for asking for the money back and having him walk away angrily and not being happy, and especially blasting them continuously in the press. And the way I looked at it and talking to people, I say, look, strictly business. I think Calvin Johnson should take advantage of the Lions, come back, mend all his anger, let it all go, and then maybe take advantage of the Lions a little bit and use them for promotion, use them for his own personal gain. And look, it's a mutual understanding. The Lions could care less if Calvin's happy. It's obvious, because you wouldn't ask for all the money back if you really cared. They just want the negativity train to stop. So knowing that, if Calvin is smart, I think he'll come back and be like, look, in the future, maybe put me on as a consultant. Maybe I'll coach here down the line. Give me a job. If I have stuff, let me advertise it. Maybe put a Calvin Johnson beer joint at Ford Field down the line. Let me recoup some of that $1 million. And so my thinking is Calvin should come back strictly business and take advantage of the Lions, just like they took advantage of him.
Yeah, look, this is weird, because Calvin Johnson was exceptionally quiet through basically his entire career. Didn't really say anything. And then all of a sudden he's going to come out, and after he leaves, it just really screams of sour grapes.
Is he a hypocrite if he comes back knowing that he blasted him? Is he a hypocrite?
I think so.
Really?
I would think so, yeah, because...
You could make that argument.
I mean, look, why sit there and say all that stuff and then turn around and come back and, the way Calvin is, oh, it's all good. Everything's okay. No, we're okay. We're okay. And he's going to sit there and he's going to hate his life.
But he really didn't say he had super hard feelings. It comes across that way. We can perceive and read the tea leaves as everybody likes to do. But he didn't burn the bridge. He didn't say this organization's terrible. He just said, I'm not really happy with how things are. So it does leave room for him to come back if things can be worked out.
Look,
and strictly business, why not?
I think he's going to come back, and I think you make a good point. Use the Lions for whatever you can
use them, right? It's a big marketing train.
The whole thing is, if you're going to come back, you can't sit there and you can't pile on this organization anymore.
Exactly.
The moment you come back and the moment you participate in camp and the moment you start taking anything, you got to be done with it.
No doubt.
So get it all out of your system then and be done.
Exactly. No doubt about it. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Calvin Johnson, I don't begrudge him for talking. I mean, when you take more than $1 million out of a man's pocket, I can understand his grumpiness, especially when he wakes up every day probably in a little bit of pain. He feels like he sacrificed a little bit more than he got back. But hey, when you look at it, you took the money, and many people will say, look, the money should shut you up. The money should let you feel better when you wake up. But hell, when I wake up feeling sore, there's no amount of money that's going to make me feel better. I'm trying everything I can to relax. Or hell, I was not feeling the best in the last 7 days.
You don't sit on $10 million.
Yeah, but if I did, I still would want my health, though. You can't put a price on health. Just imagine if you had a bad back and you had bad legs and you had to, I don't know if money...
I could go to a sexy Asian massage parlor where they sit there and they finish me off with happy endings.
See, I don't know. Sometimes you just maybe have to acknowledge that sometimes money doesn't solve all of life's problems. You can't buy health. You can't buy privacy. You can't buy that stuff. Stuff that you and I can do. We can go out to the bars. We can act a fool. No one's snapping pictures of us.
That's true.
So I don't know if you added $10 million, would I even be happy with it? Probably. I mean, shoot, I just built a, 5,000 square foot house, insulate myself, and call it a day. But you can't buy, we can sit here and say that they should act this way and act that way. But imagine if someone, even if you had $400 million, imagine if someone tried to reach out and just pull $1 million out. It's hard to do. It's easy for us to say, yeah, you should accept it. It's hard to give back money. I wouldn't give it back. Look, the Lions are trying. The Lions are $1 billion company. They asked for it. What's worse, having it taken out or having someone ask for it? That's what makes billionaires billionaires, is they ask for the money.
You know what, though? The thing is, it's the way the contract was set up. So if you're going to be mad, you sign that contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Be mad at whoever is running your legal team and be pissed off at them. You know what I'm saying? Be mad at your agent because you guys signed that contract. You don't want to play anymore. They have the right to ask for that money back, and you got to give it back. It's just the way it works.
All right, our final timeout. We'll come back with the Doc and Jock Pro Wrestling Report. Stay with us. You're listening to Doc and Jock, episode 206. Adam and I would just like to thank everybody that's been downloading the podcast across the various platforms. Anywhere at all that you can download podcasts, you can find the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. And to support us, all that we ask is you go check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. It's the hub of the operation. It's where you can go to stream all of our podcasts 24/7. You can buy tickets to all sporting events, and definitely check out the supporter and sponsor pages. There's been a lot of great companies, a lot of great places, websites that have supported the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. They've rolled the dice, and they've been willing to take a chance with us, and all we ask in return is definitely click through, support those that support us. We wouldn't be able to put on daily podcasts, do great things, cover Detroit sports, have as much fun as Adam and I and all the other hosts have had if you don't support those who support us. They've taken a chance on us, and all we ask is definitely check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com, and we greatly appreciate all the supporters and all the sponsors that have worked with the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Cuz doing a podcast with you is a little bit like being in a Punjabi prison. Let me tell you.
Oh, boy.
All the cages, feeling trapped all the time when you're all grumpy or tired. My goodness.
I usually am grumpy.
Dude, I like the Punjabi prison. I was kind of like, damn, that was sweet. What a structure. I never saw the first couple waves of Punjabi prison matches, but I'm kind of looking forward to the next pay-per-view and seeing if Randy Orton can, I don't think he's going to do it, but I'm kind of excited for the next pay-per-view, seeing if Jinder Mahal and what they're going to do with this kind of match. It doesn't look really great on television in terms of how they're going to cover it in a wrestling match, but the structure in and of itself, where you got a structure outside of the wrestling ring and then another huge metallic structure covering the outside of the ring, the Punjabi prison, I kind of like it.
It's all bamboo, not metallic. It's bamboo.
Oh, it's bamboo?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought this up, because this leads me to a theory. Would you like to hear this theory?
No doubt.
Okay, so I don't see Randy Orton winning, and I think once Randy Orton loses, he'll finally be done, and then we can move on to whatever the next storyline is, which will probably be John Cena coming in and beating Jinder Mahal.
Yeah.
Because that's what's being speculated right now. Anyways, the way I see this match ending, I'm just going to fast forward and go right to the end of it, is I see Jinder and I see Randy Orton fighting on the in between the first and the second cage on the outside there on the floor, because there's a large expanse where you wrestle on the floor as you try to get out of the
Punjabi prison.
Yeah, I see Randy Orton sitting there and flinging Jinder through the bamboo. And him landing on the outside, thus winning and retaining his championship.
Gotcha. What'd you think this week? Let's start with what your thoughts were on this week in professional wrestling. Overall, for me, I thought it was a decent week. I was more engaged this week than I was definitely in the last 3 weeks, for sure.
I thought this week's Raw was better than SmackDown, which is usually a little bit different. Normally, I think we both agree SmackDown has a little bit of a better presentation, better off flow with the show and the way the storylines go. But I was really captivated by this week's Raw. They did a good job trumping everything up for that Kurt Angle shocker, and we're going to discuss that here in a moment. But I thought Raw was better than SmackDown. I was left wanting more with SmackDown, and I wasn't really sure if the reason SmackDown felt so flat was just the way the stories were kind of laid out in the presentation, or maybe just who was in the ring doing whatever it was that they were doing.
It seemed like one of the worst crowds I've heard in a long time.
That was kind of where I was too. I thought the crowd was really flat. My wife even said something to me. She's like,
are these people like on their ass? What's going on here?
Like, are they alive? What's going on? So I just felt like it was really flat, and it was kind of it kind of took me out of it, to be for real.
No doubt about it.
What'd you think about Raw?
See, I liked Raw, but again, I told you last week, I'm tired of every week opening the show with some form of Miz talking to Dean Ambrose. Now, I guess if you're going to tease a Shield reunion, I can understand it a little bit, and I know you might even consider to see, and maybe it was trying to gauge the reaction of the fans and things like that, or maybe a little bit of trolling. But I just think that they should just go straight into Miz and Seth Rollins. I think Dean Ambrose needs to find a new feud because I don't like this extension of that feud every week. It just turns me off because I know, okay, here we go. We got 15 more minutes. But at the same time, I really liked, how Miz and the Entourage definitely needed that, where they get to come out and destroy Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. Those three guys needed that because you can talk a big game and be insulting all you want, but in the end, it's professional wrestling. So to see, those guys do some damage and to use chairs like that, it looked cool. And it's something I wanted to see. But at the same token, I kind of am ready to transition more into seeing Dean Ambrose not fighting with The Miz. And I want to see Miz and Seth Rollins go at it.
Yeah, I'm ready for the whole Dean Ambrose-Miz saga just to be done and over with. But I do like them teasing a Shield reunion. That's interesting. I thought the interaction in the promo between Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, I thought it was great. I thought it was outstanding. It was something that needed to be done, and it was something that if you're a Shield fan, you wanted to see for a long time. And it came across, especially on Seth Rollins' part, as being very genuine. Dean Ambrose looked as though he had mixed feelings and was troubled. It was well done. I thought it was done perfectly.
It ties into that, it kind of extends that storyline and kind of ties it back into why it happened.
Exactly. And the one thing I think they do is they leave the door open because it doesn't ever seem like we're going to get Roman Reigns as a heel. So it leaves the door open for Roman Reigns to come back and be another part of the Shield. So you can sit there and now you've got three guys taking on two. At some point, they can go to Roman Reigns and say, hey, look, we need you. We need the big dog. We know it's your yard. We need you to come back. We want you to sit there, team up with us so you can help us defeat Miz and the Mizites. And we can sit there and move on with whatever we got to move on with. You know what I'm saying? So I like the way they're kind of setting things up. Speaking of the way things are setting up, it looks as though we might get a heel turn, possibly from Sasha Banks or Bayley. They're getting thrown into this fatal four-way for the women's championship on Raw. And if you had to pick one of those two, who do you think would be a better heel, and who would you want to see be a heel?
Two different answers. I think the better heel would be Sasha Banks because she's all around. She can do whatever she wants. I mean, she's a great wrestler, great talker, great persona. So anything she does, really, in my mind, would be great. Who needs it more? I think it's Bayley. That character is stale and
so flat.
It's flat, and I think she would definitely, it would shock people a little bit for her to have a heel turn. So I think it would benefit her more. But I probably think Sasha Banks, the way it's kind of been looking, if you read between the lines, it's going to be her. But I would do Bayley. I would have Bayley be a heel because that character is a little bit flat. It's uninteresting.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And she's basically come out on Stone Cold's podcast and said as much. She said, look, I've thought about becoming a heel. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can look at these kids in the face and see them crying when I come out and I'm a heel. But I think her character needs to be freshened up somehow, some way, and maybe turning her heel is the way to do it. And I think it could work perfectly. I think it'd be a nice little touch.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it's one of those things where it is always tough for the babyface that's been around for a long time to turn heel, but she'll notice that it's a little bit easier to do. It'll refresh her character, and it'll allow her to do a lot more things in terms of what she can say and things like that. So we'll see if they actually do it. But honestly, realistically, it'll be Sasha Banks. That's the easy way to go.
And that's what the writers do. They always take the easy way out.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then I think it was in the 10 o'clock hour to start, Kurt Angle, and that whole segment kind of came about. Kurt Angle comes out and announces it, goes into a diatribe, and I'm like, oh man, I think Cousin Adam was pretty much on point here. Who's going to come out? I was like, well, maybe, just maybe, they'll have a shocker here and have Dixie Carter come out. But it didn't happen. He went right through and he said it. Jason Jordan is his illegitimate son. He comes out, and I heard crickets. I mean, people reacted to it, but I don't think people were thrilled either way. And they're probably like, really? This is another illegitimate son angle? And people are now questioning, like, oh, is Jason Jordan going to get a push? Is he going to be put in the title matches? How is this going to evolve? It was nice to pay it off and that there was a swerve, a surprise. It just left me kind of going, why? When I felt, hell, you could have got way more value out of just bringing American Alpha from SmackDown. Bring Gable over as well. You did not, I don't think, tap the full potential of American Alpha. And to have Jordan kind of go out on his own, maybe, just maybe, when Gable had that amazing match with AJ Styles, they said, ooh, we got a shining star here, and maybe we need to kind of elevate him. And so that leaves Jason Jordan out and about and like, oh boy, let's see how we can quickly kind of resolve this. But I could see it that way, where it's not really splitting up American Alpha. It's just highlighting Gable, and then you just got to figure out what to do with Jason Jordan. I would have liked to have seen American Alpha stick with it, because a lot of tag teams have been split up lately before we got the full potential. So it'll be interesting to see where Jason Jordan goes with this, but I'm not really invested in Jordan that much. I don't think you propelled him into superstardom by doing this.
I don't think so either. I have really mixed feelings on this, because they're not good mixed feelings, because this could have went really, really bad. They could have done, like you said, they could have brought Dixie Carter out and done this whole he's been sleeping with Dixie Carter angle. Eric Bischoff was speculating on his podcast that they might do this whole thing that TNA did with AJ Styles with a mystery woman who's having a baby, and Kazarian and Christopher Daniels were sitting there trying to blackmail her, and it was really messy, and TNA got out of it in like 2 weeks. That's how bad it was. So they could have went in one of those directions. I think in the end, probably the best thing that they could have done, and the way that they could have made this better, is it would have tied into, you could have went two different directions, right? If you went with Chad Gable, you could have done the whole thing with Stephanie McMahon, right? You could have had them have an affair with that whole angle that Triple H basically crushed a while ago. She could have sat there, she could have put the baby up for adoption, or sat there and somehow had some surrogate mother take care of the baby for her. You could have done all kinds of crazy creative things if you just used your brain. Or what you could have did, you could have had Kurt Angle and Sharmell, Booker T's wife, and his valet at the time. There was a storyline where he was stalking her, and then they could have had an affair, and Jason Jordan could have been both of their kids, and that could have caused some heat and some tension between him and Booker T, and you could have done you could have done this better. I felt like this was very flat. Like you said, when he came out and he did the whole announcement and everything. Now, Kurt Angle's delivery sometimes for some of this stuff is it itself is flat. It's very wooden. It just kind of comes across as almost being forced. And you don't get those moments like you had when Kurt Angle was wearing a cowboy hat, or he was dumping milk on himself, or any of that. You don't sometimes get that when you have segments like this. And I just feel like it could have been done a lot better. The way that they kind of came out and did it, I felt like it was very half-assed. It was half thought through. It seemed like they had an idea to sit there and go in one direction, and then all of a sudden Vince woke up in the morning, was like, you know what? Let's scrap all this and let's just do it this way. And it just seems like it was just kind of thrown together, and here it was. And it wasn't done very good. You know, I mean, there's some rumor and there's some speculation that Kurt wants to get back in the ring, and the deal was that they were going to do the whole Stephanie McMahon thing, and then Kurt's physicals came back, and he's not cleared to wrestle because of his neck. So if that's the case, this was emergency programming, and they went in this direction instead. So it just kind of frustrating. The whole thing's just, I feel, was a total letdown. I just feel like it was just a gigantic letdown.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I just think that you could have done a lot more with it, or just scrap it all together. I mean, you could have even teased it where you could have got another week out of it. I mean,
it didn't feel like they just kind of pushed it on you really quick.
Yeah, they didn't. You don't have to pay it off. You could have. It's wrestling. You could have waited another week and maybe let it.
This thing you could have built for another 2 months if you wanted to.
Yeah, and again, really, you were spot on last week's report, because you talked about the potential of a fatal four-way for the Universal title, and it played out almost perfectly, where Braun Strowman comes in and destroys a great match with Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe. So there's an opportunity there to have four guys wrestle for the title with Brock Lesnar. It can go that route. It was a great matchup. I thought, you could have had a winner, but you continue the feud with Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns, and you don't kill the heat for anybody. You don't kill Roman's heat or Joe's heat. So I thought the main event was pretty good and was way better, like you said, than SmackDown, where it seemed like with SmackDown, everything was set up for success, but just fell a little bit flat, especially because you got to remember there's certain shows, and I know with more pay-per-views, you have more setup shows, but it didn't seem like the John Cena promo elevated my interest in him fighting Rusev. It seemed like his promo was kind of all over the place, where like he was just kind of going somewhere, and he kept talking and talking and talking, and it didn't do nothing. And because we've seen
it
like
before, me when I just start rambling about whatever.
It just didn't seem to go anywhere. And then you had like matchups that were really kind of uninteresting. I could see, Sami Zayn having a feud with Mike Kanellis, but okay, having Mike win that first matchup. You did get a panty shot of Maria. That was cool. That was like the highlight of the show. Yeah, I thought Charlotte and Becky Lynch's match could have been a little bit more. And I look at it and I go, okay, AJ Styles matchup with the tag matchup with Shinsuke versus Kevin Owens and Baron Corbin was pretty good, executed well, but it didn't, in terms of what you need. The only segment was the first 15 minutes where Randy Orton comes out and climbs the Punjabi prison, and Jinder Mahal does his shtick, and that was about it for me in terms of investment and saying, oh, I'm really interested. Everyone knows, in terms of a preview, the AJ Styles Kevin Owens match is going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows that Punjabi prison match is going to be really something to see. Other than that, I really don't care about Battleground.
Yeah.
SmackDown didn't do enough.
Again, another bad go-home show.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't... The whole purpose of the show before the pay-per-view is to get you interested.
Yeah.
And this just seemed like 2-hour programming that was just there. Like, we had to fill 2 hours on USA, so let's just kind of throw this up. And it was a lot of the same storylines from last week.
Yep.
You didn't really build on anything.
Yep.
You're just kind of left there. I mean, the Mike and Maria in the Sami Zayn match... That was probably the only thing you really built upon, you know. It just otherwise everything just okay, cool. Like you had John Cena come out, and yeah, I thought John Cena cut a pretty decent promo, but like you said, at points it felt like he was just rambling on, and he was just sitting there trying to fill time. Like he had an earpiece in, and they're like, "Look, we need you to go another 5 minutes."
And maybe because the crowd wasn't going anywhere, it's like, okay, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. I mean, nothing hit. Nothing.
It was like the flattest crowd ever. Like those guys didn't get hyped for anything. Trish Stratus could have came out in a string bikini, covered in oil, and none of those guys would have sat there and popped. Do you know what I'm saying? That's what kind of crowd it was. It was brutal, absolutely brutal. And I think that kind of forced some of the performers' hands because they were like, okay, well, what can we do to get a reaction here? You know, how can we make this better, and how can we liven this crowd up? And those guys were just dead, absolutely dead, and I think it killed everything with that show.
And a point of reference is sometimes when you have a dead crowd, you just got to go with the flow and not try to play to that, because I think that's what made the promos maybe not as effective as they needed to be.
Absolutely. I think you're right on. You're spot on right there.
Hit me with some news and notes. I know you got a lot of information. I know you're listening to 50 wrestling podcasts, so there's a lot of news and notes, and hit me with any spoiler alerts if you want to, because, damn, if you're going to be spot on, at least I want a spoiler alert, because I was watching, I'm like, damn, Adam hit it to the point, and I'm like, it's Jason Jordan. He called it. Now, you're a little bit wrong. It wasn't Stephanie, but he had an illegitimate son, and it was Jason Jordan, so I was like, that was bogus.
I was really hoping they'd go in a different direction there.
Yeah. Hit me with some news and notes.
So news and notes, all right? So we got the crushing news. If you're a huge Talking Smack fan, we've got some crushing news over the weekend that they canceled it. Now, the cancellation of this program seems to be by one Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
And the way things are kind of working at the television tapings, Vince isn't there as much as he used to be. He's taking kind of more of a background role. And I guess Vince wasn't really high on Talking Smack. He didn't feel like this really placated to what they were trying to do and what they were trying to drive home. He thought it was maybe a little bit too freewheeling, because you got some of your best promos, and you got some of your best connections with some of the in-ring performers on Talking Smack, when they would just cut real promos and just go hard at each other. And Vince doesn't want that. He likes the more scripted. He wants it to almost play out like a television show that he's sitting there puppeting.
Yep.
And so he has basically come out and canceled this program because of this. Now, Talking Smack will take place after the pay-per-views.
Yep.
So it's not completely gone away, but he did shut it down, so it's not going to be on after 205 Live anymore. And I think putting it on after 205 Live
terrible idea. Yeah,
it caused a disconnect with the audience.
That was it.
So again, move 205 Live to the pre-show for SmackDown, let SmackDown air, then play Talking Smack. I think you'd be doing a lot better.
Yep.
Rey Mysterio Jr. may be coming back to WWE. Right now, he's being courted by the WWE as well as GFW, which used to be TNA, which was Impact. So you follow all that around. So Rey Mysterio is trying to figure out what he wants to do, where he wants to go. Now, the thing that might help tip his hand is GFW is taped, and they generally tape 6 weeks in advance. So it'd be a lighter workload for him. That being said, they might also put the strap on him because Alberto El Patron, a.k.a. Alberto Del Rio, is now suspended from GFW because of everything that's going on with Paige and domestic abuse allegations. So they might strip Alberto El Patron, slap the title on Mysterio if he goes to GFW. Now, the thought process is maybe Rey Mysterio will come back to WWE. His kid wants to get back into wrestling or get into wrestling. They've got the Performance Center, so that might also tip the scales towards WWE. On top of it, you get to come back home where you had some of your best success ever. John Cena, as we know, he's a free agent. John Cena may be coming to a Raw near you very, very shortly.
Oh, okay.
So John Cena was at some of the house shows. He was wrestling Bray Wyatt. And generally what happens is you wrestle at the house shows. Usually you do a couple weeks at a house show. And then what happens is that gets put on Raw in the following months to come. So it would look like John Cena is going to get into a match with possibly Bray Wyatt when he makes his Raw debut. And that could be in a couple of weeks. So keep an eye on that. And finally, there is
sexiness.
Yeah.
Wrestlers like to get down, I say, huh?
There's some reports that there will be more sex tapes, naked photos of your favorite WWE superstars. Now, what's being talked about is that there will be a full-page sex tape that will be released. On top of that, some of the male performers, guys like Kevin Owens, will have some nudie shots that may be released as well. So keep an eye on that. I know there's a website that you like that you send to me, and they usually are up on all of it before we can even get our hands on anything.
It's unbelievable, man. This day and age, you can't. With iTunes, the cloud, or whatever nonsense is out there, you cannot put anything on an iPhone or anything with an eye or a computer, because if you're in the public eye, there are people, it's kind of weird. Maybe our next goal will be to strive to become so famous and popular that people want to hack into our phones and see what the hell we're messaging each other. They'll be like, damn, these guys like each other? Look at the nonsense they text each other. But that's about it on my phone, because hopefully the apps that are private are actually I wonder if you could hack into some of these privacy apps that are out there. So
I don't know. You know what? If you ever looked at the stuff that was on my phone, you'd be like, why do you have this?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have naked pictures of me, and I don't have naked pictures of my wife or anybody else.
Right.
But I've got some really awful things in my phone.
So it's just one of those things where if you're a celebrity, you got to either have a backup phone or you got to have a number that no one ever could find or anything like that, because it seems like they can get your info if you got the one phone and it's got some funky stuff on it. People are releasing it, so it's a shameful thing. But I'll definitely peek at it if it comes out.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you'll send that to me, and I'll take a peek at it too.
Great podcast, sir. Thank you for the time. Always enjoy recording with you. Episode 206, awesome, sir. Looking forward to the next ones.
Love it, man. Let's just keep doing it. What are we at? 206, you said?
206,
This is
baby.
the 412. Let's go. 412. We'll go to 824. We'll just keep pumping these things out. Always a good time. Avila, don't screw it up. Please don't screw it up. Craziness, sir. The second that we ended the podcast, really crazy, a guy that I've been talking to that has a wrestling website sent me a link that said, from abc7ny.com, a helicopter makes an emergency landing in the waters off of New York, and Shane McMahon was on it, but he's okay, and things like that. So I'll look into it further, but I just got it now from somebody that sent me a link. And so this part of this project is really cool, is we get info sent to us nonstop all day. And so somebody that might be a potential sponsor sent me the link, and we'll look into it a little bit further. But if it's true, Shane McMahon just survived just as we were recording. The second you just said your last comment, I got the link that a helicopter made an emergency landing and that he's fine and survived. Holy cow.
Crazy stuff, huh?
Yeah, that's crazy. It landed in the water, you said?
I think so.
Oh, wow. That's nuts. For a guy who flies around in helicopters all day long.
Yeah, two people. I'm gonna send you the link now as we're done. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Definitely check out all the content that we do here. DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
Go to Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And then you scroll on to CBS Sports, and the headline reads, CBS Sports has the Lions as one, or... You put an OR there.
I did.
Dipshit.
My bad.
Yeah.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I have voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.